Good morning. I'm Ed Poswoli, president of Tripp Scott, and today, as a pre-election discussion, we have the chairman of the Democratic Broward County Party, Mitch Ceasar. Welcome, Mitch.
Thank you, Ed.
We also have the Republican Party chair of Broward County, Richard DiNapoli. Richard?
Thank you, Ed.
All right, so let's talk, guys, about this presidential race. So what do we expect locally the Broward County overall voter turnout to be? Mitch?
I would say, using historical norms, which is 2004 and earlier, 2008 was a Democratic wave year. I don't look for anything like that, nor does the country. I would say the turnout, which is normally historically about 65% or so.
So you're figuring somewhere between 650,000 voters and 700,000 votes cast in Broward.
That would be a fair estimate if historical norms hold.
Richard, you agree with that?
Well, if that's what's going to happen, it makes me feel good, because with all the momentum on Romney's side, if the Democrats can't produce their 08 numbers from Broward County, Romney's looking really good for the statewide victory.
And what percentage are we looking at from a standpoint of a Republican vote for Romney in Broward?
We're looking for a total percentage of about 35. Bush got that back in 04, and he won the state by a few points. And if we hit that this year, then we're probably expecting the same result. So
you're looking at 35% of the roughly 700,000 votes that Mitch was talking about.
Yep, from all parties, whether it's independents voting Republican or Republicans or even crossover Democrats. The total vote, we're looking to hit 35.
And Mitch, on your end, last time in 2008, President Obama won Broward by some 250,000 plus votes.
Correct.
And what do you anticipate this year from a differential?
Well, I think they're different times. As I said, that was a Democratic wave year nationally, which means, of course, Florida and, of course, Broward County. If we look at historical norms and our margins in the ballpark of about 200,000 votes, I also think we're going to do very well with independents in Broward County.
And what issues do you think are going to move voters to President Obama, particularly in Broward?
I think for the senior vote, the fact that they do feel threatened with Social Security and Medicare, and the Ryan Romney, you notice I'm inversing it because that was his plan, does scare seniors, whether D's, R's, or I's. I think also you have to look at issues such as the fact that the president obviously has doubled the stock market basically to over 13,000, and as we tape today, the market's up very significantly today, happily. I think also, as we've seen in the news, he's acting as the, if not commander-in-chief, the weatherman-in-chief, and the president truly of the entire country. As you've seen with Chris Christie, that's blending over into showing that he can be and has been a nonpartisan figure as much as Mitch McConnell would ever let him do. As insiders may recall, he said the day after he was elected president that his only job was to make him a one-term president and being basically an obstacle, which he's done a pretty good job of.
I'm going to let Richard address that so I don't have to bite my tongue anymore. Richard, what do you say? What are the issues moving Broward County voters to vote for Romney?
Well, I'd say the economy is the #1 issue on everybody's mind. And if that is what people are voting their pocketbooks, then they're going to decide that we can't afford another 4 years like the past 4 years. So they're going to vote for Mitt Romney. Now, Mitch is correct that independents usually vote with where they live. So if you live in Broward County, there's lots of Democrats. So independents probably are going to lean a little bit more left. But that being said, there are still over 270,000 independents out there. I expect a lot of them, especially when you look at the national polls, showing independents moving in Romney's direction by almost double digits.
So what's your hope with respect to independents in Broward? You know, regardless of the turnout, how do you think they break out between Obama and Romney?
I expect them to go more for Obama because we are in Broward County, but I would expect them, looking at these national polling, looking at the economy being the #1 issue, even people that might have a center-left or left mentality, I think they're going to break Romney's way and go for the Republican side this year because of the economy being a very important issue.
Does Romney win Florida?
Yes.
Mitch, does Obama win Florida?
I would call it a pure toss-up, and that's not dodging it. We are a swing state. I think it's very, very close. Current polls show the president up in Florida 2 points as we speak here today. I would call it a total toss-up. I do think other parts of the ticket are easier to call, like Bill Nelson for the Senate.
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. So let's put aside the Mitch Ceasar two-step on that answer. The Senate race, you're pretty confident that Senator Nelson wins?
I am positive that Bill Nelson will win.
Richard?
They just put out some numbers from Connie Mack's team saying that he would win narrowly by a point or so. You do see that race tightening, and if there is a big Republican wave, I would expect that would lift all of the other races on the ballot. And even though we have seen the polls not look so great, but he could pull off the victory just like his father did back in when he ran.
Mitch, how does that affect the congressional race, say like the Hasner-Frankel race?
Well, first let me respond real quickly, not to be silly, but I do think the Nelson race will not even be close. I know Connie Mack's father, to use an old phrase, believe me, this one is not the same. I don't think he has any of the wherewithal of his father. I don't think they're comparable other than by name. As to the congressional race, the only real race in question locally is the Hasner-Frankel race. I think Frankel will win. I think Frankel will win by 2 to 3 points.
So you're figuring somewhere between 51, 49, 52, 48.
I think it's a pretty close race, but I think Frankel certainly wins.
With regards to the Senate race, I would say this is Florida. All elections are going to be tight. You have a lot of momentum on Connie Mack's side. I could definitely see him winning. Of course, it's going to be narrow, though. The same goes for the Adam Hasner-Frankel race. That is has a Democratic registration advantage of about 8 or 9 points in the redistricting. But that being said, Adam Hasner has a lot of crossover appeal to independents. Polling has shown that race to be narrow, whichever way it goes, and I think it'll go Hasner's way. It's going to be tight. You're talking a couple of points either way. It's not going to be a blowout either way.
And what about although Alan West is no longer touches Broward, he still has a lot of big fans in Broward. What about the Wes Murphy race?
It's interesting. I hear polls from both sides. One side's up by a lot, another side's up by a lot. I call that to be very close. I think the real question, and Alan West has raised more money than any congressional candidate in the entire United States because of the internet primarily. I do think that'll be an absolute toss-up race. Cannot call it. The real question will be whether voters in that district, primarily Republicans, even though Alan West is a Republican, are those to tolerate his antics, both of the past and of the present. And that may really be a referendum on his persona, if nothing else.
So do you agree that it really is about Alan West as opposed to Murphy not offering a whole lot of an alternative, or is it just a referendum on Alan West?
No, I'd say they're both running in a district which, Patrick Murphy, first-time candidate. Alan West, about 80% of the voters there have not had a chance yet to vote for him because of the redistricting. He's running in a different seat.
I see.
Either way, right.
Alan West is a national figure. He's beloved on the right. He won, with about 55% of the vote in the old district, which was pretty much a 50-50 district. I would see him winning by at least 5 points going into November 6th in the new district.
The other congressional race that is national scope because of the candidate that's there, the Wasserman Schultz versus Karen Harrington. Are we going to be surprised from your end that Karen Harrington beats her come election night, or no?
You might see a surprise. I mean, Karen Harrington released a poll showing that she was within striking distance. It said about 4 points down from Debbie. So you never know what might happen.
Mitch?
I think the district dictates that the Democrat's going to win. I also would say Debbie is a very strong candidate in her own right. The fact that she was the DNC chair gave her some additional publicity. She had to have sharper elbows because as the chair of the DNC, that is your job. I think she's going to win because I think, frankly, she's popular in her district. And also the fact that, frankly, Karen Harrington's entire campaign is simply, I'm not Debbie. And that will not be enough.
Sounds like Patrick Murphy's campaign. Yeah. But either way.
And that's why
you stole the words out of my mouth.
Perhaps both Democrats will win for that reason.
Maybe. Let's move down to the state race. The one state race that appears to be truly competitive is the state Senate race between Ellen Bogdanoff and Maria Satz. Let's go to Richard. Richard, does Ellen retain that Senate seat or stay there, or do we see a little bit of an upset?
I'd see Ellen. It's a very similar situation to Adam Hasner. It's a district which used to be almost 50-50 that now is about 8.5 to 9 point Democratic registration advantage. Ellen is a very popular candidate. She's won over independents handily in the past, and it's going to be a narrow race either way. But I do see Ellen being able to take it. It's going to be a close race, though. So every vote's going to count, and a lot of it's going to be based on turnout and enthusiasm.
Maybe.
I would agree with Richard. I think it's going to be a close race. I don't think the registration aspect is that important. What isn't interesting is the fact you have two incumbent senators, both female, both running against each other. Ellen has done a fairly good job in portraying herself as a moderate, which is contrary to her voting record. Her voting record is very conservative, but when she runs for re-election, she tries to define herself as moderate, which frankly isn't totally true. But I think it's a close race, and I think it's one that draws a lot of attention here. I'm not sure how much attention it's of a statewide situation is, because Republicans have a pretty reliable majority.
So let's move to the sheriff's race lastly. Sheriff Lamberti re-elected?
I believe so, yes.
Why?
Well, he's been a good sheriff. He's done a great job. He is not, we've had some flamboyant sheriffs in the past. Ken Jenney comes to mind, who went to prison. Lamberti is like a regular guy he comes across. He comes across as, our sheriff. That's even the campaign slogan, keep Sheriff Lamberti our sheriff. And I think he's in it for the right reasons. It's a public safety position, and I think he's going to get a ton of crossover Democratic support, and I think he's going to be fine.
So, Mitch, is he your sheriff?
To answer your question, I think the race is a toss-up. Everybody I talk to from both sides think it's a toss-up. What's interesting, of course, is the example given about Ken Jenney, and of course Sheriff Lamberti has his name on everything as well. I think one of his greatest strengths, frankly, is the fact he's been very smart in the way he's marketed himself for the last 4 years. And I know he has a marketing team or a public relations group or outreach, whatever, that sometimes seems like there are about 800 people on the payroll for that. He's been very, very good at that. That's not to say he's been a bad sheriff, but he's been very smart in the way he's marketed himself. It's a Democratic county. It's a very close race.
And so lastly, let's go back to the presidential race. Who wins, and what are we watching for on election night? Richard?
I'd say Mitt Romney. It's going to be close either way. A lot of it's going to depend on the Electoral College. I see Romney winning Florida, and it's going to be a narrow Electoral College victory.
Mitch?
I would agree with Richard that it's going to be a narrow electoral victory, but with a different result. I think Florida is a total toss-up. I think Ohio is gone for Romney. The polls are very stubborn. He saved General Motors. Ohio remembers that. It affects them dramatically, almost as much as Michigan, second only to Michigan. New polls came out in all the swing states with the president up in all of them. He's beginning to pull away in other locations like Iowa. He's pulling away with 6, 7, 8 points already as of a new poll today. So I think what happens is the president, again with a toss-up in Florida, but even if he lost Florida, which I think will be very close, point in either direction, I think he wins Ohio. I think he wins Iowa. He's up in all the other states. Romney would literally, just by President Obama winning Ohio, would have to literally run the board, and the polls are showing that's simply not going to happen.
I think when Mitch started the conversation, we talked about the Democratic turnout models in Broward County, and he mentioned he's not wanting to go by 08. And I think that's one of the problems that you might see in a lot of these polls, even in Ohio and in these other swing states, is that they don't know how to model it. If you model it on 04, you're probably looking at a Romney victory. If you model it on 08, it probably doesn't look so great for Romney, but I don't think anyone out there thinks that he's going to have the same enthusiasm and the same turnout amongst Democrats as he did in 08. So I think a lot of these polls might be somewhat illusory, just like you mentioned in the beginning when you talked about turnout in Broward. Now, if you're expecting to have that much less turnout in Broward, and when we've seen some numbers out of Ohio showing that the Democratic turnout so far in absentees and early is dramatically lower than it was in 08, I think a lot of these polls might be proven wrong on Election Day because they're modeling after Democratic turnout, which I think is overly enthusiastic.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate the conversation today. Thank you, Mitch. Thank you, Richard. One last thought to our viewers. Please go out and vote. The key, if you're looking at Broward County as where the state of Florida would be, last time President Obama won Broward by some 250,000 votes. The key numbers on the percentages are, with a 70% turnout roughly, would be if the Republican candidate can get somewhere above 34% in Broward, then Florida is likely to go Romney. If it's somewhere below that, then President Obama looks good. The differential is the key, though. 250,000 votes last time that the president came out of here, so that's a key kind of look at that as you're watching the Broward returns come out. And so anyway, go out and vote, and I thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Ed.